Now let's go over leetcode question number 1119, remove vowels from a string. Now, given a string, remove the vowels A, E, I, O, U from it and return the new string. So these are our vowels. Now we're going to be given a string, and what we have to do is we just have to go through all the characters in our string and remove all the vowels. So if my current one is a vowel, so let's say that for this E, we're going to remove it, remove this, remove this E, I, A, and so on and so forth. If all the elements in our string are vowels, we will obviously return an empty string. So first, you will have to iterate through string, and if it's a vowel, you can either add an empty string or just skip. Because what we have to do is we have to keep adding our characters into a variable called output. So what we can do is if it's not a vowel, we can add it. If it is a vowel, we can just add an empty string or just skip and go to the next character in line. If you guys find this helpful, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks. Now let's implement our first solution where we're going to have a time complexity of O of n squared, and space is going to be O of n. And later we are actually going to optimize this so that we have a time of O of n. Now let's try to implement our solution. So first thing we need is a string of all the vowels that we have. So it's going to be called vowels, and this is going to be a string of all the vowels. So A, E, I, O, U. And next, we want to create a variable called output. So let output is equal to, and we're going to set it to an empty string for now. After that, we want to iterate through all the elements in our string. So iterate through all the characters. So for that, let's use a for of loop. So for const character, and let's just call it current value of our string, which is represented by S. And we need to check, well, if our current character is in our vowels string, we don't want to add it, right? Because we don't want to add E to our output. We're supposed to get rid of all the vowels. So what we can do is we can check using something called includes. So we can do if vowels that includes current value, and we'll have a logical not operator here. So if the current value is not included in our vowels string, we want to add it to our output. So that's going to be output plus equals current value. And finally, let's try returning our output. Here you can see that we have an empty string for this one, and we have all the elements without our vowels here. So what do? We created a vowel string where it has all the vowels, and we created our output. Now we iterate through all the elements in our string, so all the characters. Now we check, well, if this returns true, so just ignore the logical not operator. If vowels that includes current value is true, that means that whatever our current value is, it's an vowel. So we did the opposite of that. So if it doesn't include the current string, we are going to add it to our output, because if this is false, it means that it's a non-vowel, right? Now let's just go over our code. First thing we did was we created a variable for our vowels. Next, we created our output variable to store our result, and it's an empty string for now. We iterate through all the elements in our string, and we check, well, is our current character, so our current value, is it a non-vowel? If it is, this is going to return false, right? So ignoring the not operator. So if it's false, and if we have a not operator, that's obviously going to evaluate as true. So if it's a constant, we want to add it to our output. And finally, when we're done, we just want to return our output variable, and we are going to get our result. Now let's try to implement our second solution where we optimize our time complexity to O of n. So how are we gonna optimize it? Well, before, what we did was we use includes to check if current string was in our vowels string, right? But for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to have a map of our vowels. So if you know, looking up a element in a map is a constant operation, whereas includes is going to be O of n. And that's why we had O of n squared for our first solution. So this one is obviously going to be more efficient. So let's try to implement our solution now. So first thing I want is I want my map This is going to be new map. And now I need to put all the elements into my map variable. So before that, let's actually create vowels string. Now we want to iterate through all the vowels and put it into our map. And we're going to start at 0. I is going to be less than vowels.length, and we increment by 1 each time. Now we have to add key value pairs to our map. So that's going to be map.set. And this is going to be our current string, which is vowels index I, and we pass in our value as I. And to be honest, whatever our values doesn't matter, because we are simply checking if current character exists in our vowels or not. And I'll mention this later, but this is actually going to give a wrong answer, but I'll show you that later. Now we want to iterate through our string. So let I is equal to 0, I is less than s.length, and we increment by 1 each time. And let's actually create our output variable. Let's return our output and just get rid of this parentheses. Okay, that looks good. And now we have to check if our current string exists in our map or not. So let's do that. So if map.get, and what are we getting? We're getting the current character. Well, if this exists in our vowels map, we don't want to add it, right? So let's do the opposite case, just like before. So if it is a constant, we want to add it to our output. So that's going to be output plus equals our current character. And as you can see, it's not working. We're supposed to get an empty array or empty string for this one. And you can see for the first solution that all the variables are good, except that the A's are not gone. So what's the problem? Remember that we talked about how this solution is going to work. And that's because, let's console log our map. You see that A is pointing to 0, 1, E is 1, 2, I is 2, so on and so forth. So when A is pointing to 0, 0 is a falsy value, right? And if you have a falsy value that we get over here, so 0 and the logical not operator is going to evaluate to true. So that's saying that A is a constant, and we don't want that. A is not a constant. So in order to fix that, what we could do is we could add 1 to our number here, and you can see that A starts now at 1 and goes all the way through 5. And whatever our value is, it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't return a falsy value, just like a 0. So now you can see that our solution is looking good. If you guys find this helpful, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks.